Hello everyone, Megan Mundy here. Today we're going to be talking about the language of Dungeons and Dragons, the game. And before we jump into that world of fun and fantasy, I want to talk about language and my language, specifically its origins. So I'm originally from Auburn, Alabama. My primary language is English, academic English, and Southern Central Alabamian English. At a young age, I decided that I wanted my language to sound like standardized English and try to remove my Southern accent. So I did that through mimicking those in the academic setting, like my teachers, my instructors, my family members. However, the Southern Central Alabamian English definitely stayed as a part of my family, and that's from my mom's side of the family. So whenever I'm speaking with my mom, my grandfather, my papa, my Southern dialect definitely starts to show through, or if I'm really sleepy. So that is the primary mode of my language and its origins. In addition to that, I have the language of my career and jobs. I was an ELA classroom teacher, a theater teacher, directed lots of shows and musicals, a florist, graphic designer, communication specialist, an assistant learning specialist, and tutor coordinator at Thornton Center here at UTK. That has its own language in athletics. In addition, my religion of Christianity, specifically Church of Christ, that heritage has its own language, and that's something that I use regularly. In addition, my hobbies running long distance, marathons, and half marathons, and I use the term running lightly. I'm very slow, but it's something that I enjoy, and I will add in a caveat. I haven't done that since I've had our daughter Maggie, but it's something that I want to get back into when I have more time. I also have the language of relationship. I am a wife, mother, daughter, aunt, friend, sister-in-law, and all of those relationships inform my language. And last but not least, pop culture. I love TV. Love TV. Movies and the show Survivor. I've watched every single episode of every single season. I can talk about Survivor like my family talks about SEC football. I love it. And not just TV for entertainment and consumption purposes, but I love the writing, the producing, every aspect of it is fascinating to me. Fun fact, I was on set as a movie extra for the film Selma, which was filmed in Montgomery, but I'll talk about that later. So let's hop into the world of D&D. So the origins of D&D, it was designed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. It was published by Tactical Studies Rules Incorporated in 1974. And it's based on the game called Chainmail, which is a medieval miniature game based on warplay mechanics. The creators of D&D used the same rules as Chainmail and added fantasy components. And I was just curious because I didn't know where this game originated, how long it's been around. And that was really interesting to me that they took the mechanics of a game and then added this element of high fantasy, which is where we get the game that we play today. So the location for this project, my sources included the Player's Handbook, which is this book, and YouTube tutorials. I also listen to the Critical Role YouTube channel and podcast, and it's simply where you get to listen in to players playing a game, playing their campaign, and it is fantastic. Well done. And it's a great way to immerse yourself in this community without actually playing the game. And of course, the D&D official website. So if you're not familiar with the game, essentially you have one person that is your dungeon master or your DM, and they are narrating the situation and the outcomes of your choices and actions through a scenario. And so you have a character that you are playing in this game. You have a character sheet, which is what you see here on this slide that you fill out. And then you have a series of die. Let's see. And that's it. That's all you need. I played 2 different campaigns. I've played an introductory campaign at Lucky Dice, which is a board game store. And that was just an introduction on the basic rules and how the game functions, and it was really helpful. And I also managed to play with a group. It was me and my husband, and then a series of 12-year-olds. it was pretty hilarious. And then I'm calling this the Campaign of Doctors. I do not know what their campaign was actually called, but I have a friend that's a pediatrician, and she plays all the time. And I said, hey, I really wanted to try. Could I just sit in on a campaign and watch? Like, no, you come and play with us. And so I played with them. It was a series of surgeons and pediatrics, and it was awesome. So 8 to 10 hours of that gameplay as well. And for that one, it wasn't a one-off, meaning one-time campaign. I actually hopped in on a larger story that these people had played, and it was really cool. So after spending a lot of time in this scenario and playing the game and looking at all these resources and learning and reading, what I absorbed as their community values include creativity. They value creativity and being willing to innovate. You have to imagine. That's the whole mechanic of this game, is you are imagining what's happening around you. They also value improvisation. Now in theater, improvisation is when you don't have a script and you are simply deciding in the moment what is happening. Same thing in this form of game. Now in improvisation, the rule is you say yes in a scene, and then the people that you are acting with say yes and. How this plays out in Dungeons and Dragons is simply the dungeon master says, "Oh no, you have been attacked by a giant goldfish." And you would say, "Oh yes, I have been, and I'm stabbing the goldfish with a magic wand," and it bursts into bubbles, right? So I'm saying yes, agreeing to the fact that I'm being attacked by a giant goldfish, and I'm contributing by attacking it with a magic wand and turning it into a billion bubbles. The community also, regardless of the setting I was playing in, the DM is always right. The dungeon master is always right. If the dungeon master says that goldfish turned into a dragon when you hit it with your wand, you don't say, "No, it didn't." Yes, it did. They are right. If you say, "Hey, I want to turn into a beautiful butterfly," and the DM says, "No, you can't do that in this situation," the answer is no. They also see themselves as storytellers and contributors to that story. They firmly believe in the power of words, the power of language, and the power of story. In addition, this community is widely inclusive. If you show any remote interest in D&D to a friend or colleague that says they play D&D, the automatic response I received was, "Come on, come on, come on." Now, I was, of course, wildly intimidated. "Look at this book. What?" I was like, "I will never know all the rules. I'm not going to be creative enough to not ruin your game." And I was very intimidated. But that didn't happen to be the case. They were incredibly inclusive and willing to answer all of my questions. And I had millions of questions. And they wanted people to enjoy this socialization, this time together, this world building process together. It's all about the community that they build around this world and around this game. Now, the stereotypes that I held before diving into this community would definitely be that the people that play D&D are incredibly intelligent, and there's no way I'm going to be able to keep up with them. That it was only guys that play. That's a stereotype that I had, which wasn't true. Girls and guys play this game. Everyone plays this game. It doesn't matter if you're gender. And then I asked when I was playing, we had some downtime, how do you think people see Dungeons and Dragons? Like, what are some of the stereotypes? And the most common response is like, "Oh, we're antisocial, we are unhygienic, we are in somebody's mama's basement, and we're not intelligent." Those are the main things. And the reason that people think this is because of movies and film and not actually playing the game. They just automatically judge it as something that's super nerdy or geeky. That's people that are into this. And that's just not true. Like I said, I played with a series of pediatricians, right? So that was really awesome to see people breaking through those stereotypes. And originally, D&D was very low on the mainstream, right? Didn't really hear much about it unless you were really involved. But recently, it's come back into popularity because of pop culture. Things like the rise in popularity of Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, right? And no spoilers, but plot 4 really wraps around D&D. And so we've had a lot of influx of adolescents playing this game. So here's some examples of language that you'll see. This is about the character development, strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. These terms are played throughout interacting the campaign and with the dungeon master, and those words pop up again and again, as well as bonds and flaws, what your character holds most dear, what could one day undermine your character, as well as classes and alignments. There's been some kickback on D&D about having race and class in the handbook, but the community has fought against that and said, no, this is actually really inclusive because you get to choose. You get to choose your class. It's not predetermined. You get to choose the race. You get to choose how your character aligns with that. Is it good, evil, lawful, chaotic? Is it neutral? And that's where you get that freedom to express race and class without any boundaries, which is the beauty of the game. So what does this mean for teaching? Right? Well, first, it definitely showed me the power of language and story, and that my students are engaging in story outside of the classroom. Often I've found when I've been teaching writing or narratives or even novel studies, students would come from the approach of like, oh, well, this is just for class, it's just for school, it's just academics, etc. But actually, story and narrative interweaves itself in all different ways, and this is just one of them. And it also encourages me moving forward in my practice in the classroom is to ask questions about things I don't understand that my students have a wealth of knowledge about, like D&D or like Minecraft or Fortnite or all kinds of things that I have no clue about. I remember I had a student that was really into horseback riding. I don't know anything about horses, nothing. I know they're pretty. That's it. And so we went to one of her horse shows and she showed me all of these different terms and it was amazing, right? So just being open, finding those points that you can connect with your students and learn the languages that they speak, whether that is something that you're familiar with or not. Just break through that barrier and learn from them. It's a great way to connect with students. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a magical day.